Ryan told me I had a bike crash yesterday. I actually was able to crash on grass and not dirt. So, I was thankful for the. Yeah, well, yeah. My knee's kind of on Haley too, into the oaks grass. I just flew.
That's why I cried. Fall off all the time.
Yeah. It came back to get me.
All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Sweetwater City Council to order and ask Tyler Looney with First Methodist to give the invocation this morning and Councilman McPherson to do the flags.
Let us pray. Well, Father God, we thank you so much for this day. Lord, we rejoice, we are glad in it because this is the day that you have made, Father. We thank you most of all that we can declare we are your children through Christ Jesus. Father, we thank you for the rain that you have brought to our land these last 24 hours. What a blessing it is. May we be reminded that you are a God who is faithful to your people, that you hear our prayers, Lord, that you answer our prayers. Father, we ask now that you would hear our prayers to give us wisdom and guidance as we navigate what it looks like to lead in this city and in this capacity. Father, we pray for us as we navigate budgets, as we make decisions regarding finances. Lord, would we truly be good stewards of what you have allowed us to be stewards over? Father, we thank you again for the good news of Jesus Christ that we can declare we are yours, and we thank you for your presence with us now through the Holy Spirit. Would you be with us, guide us, and direct us this day? Through Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, we'll now move to item 4, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approval of minutes for the meeting held on May the 14th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Who seconded that?
Pearson.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, item 5 calls for public input. At this time, anyone is allowed to speak on any matter other than personal matters or matters under litigation for a length of time not to exceed 3 minutes. No council discussion or action may take place on the matter until such matter has been placed on an agenda and posted. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Okay. We'll now move to item 6A, which is discuss, consider, and act upon a resolution authorizing application for financial assistance from the Texas Water Development Board for water system improvements and making certain findings in connection therewith. Mr. Sage. Or do you want me to just see if anybody's got questions on it?
Just a quick explanation on this. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This pertains to the lead service line funding through the Water Development Board. Project we've talked about quite a bit over the past several council meetings, and this is a formal resolution that the Water Development Board needs to complete the financial application. Any questions for me?
No. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now read the resolution into the record. Resolution authorizing application for financial assistance from the Texas Water Development Board for water system improvements and making certain findings in connection therewith. Okay, we'll now move to item 6B, which is discuss, consider, and act upon awarding bids for asphalt type CRS-2, CRS-2P, fog seal, and grade 4 crushed rock to be used for the fiscal year 2024 street seal coat project. The bids were opened and the low bids were taken.
Make a motion we accept the bids for P2 emulsions and REJs for grade rock.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll now move to item 6C, which is discuss, consider, and act upon entering into an agreement with Tommy Morris Agency to act as a broker of record for insurance purposes and to evaluate competitive sealed proposals for self-insured group health benefits to be considered at a council meeting, July the 9th, 2024 meeting. Is there any questions? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion we consider and act upon entering into an agreement with Tommy Morris Agency to act as a broker of record for insurance purposes and to evaluate competitive sealed proposals for self-insured group health insurance benefits.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried and approved. We'll now move to item 6D, which is enter into public hearing to consider and discuss request to rezone T&P Block 21A 6.013 acre tract addressed at 3203 East Broadway Avenue, Sweetwater, Nolan County, Texas, from A dwelling district to K industrial district. Do we have a motion to open public hearing?
I make a motion we open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have a rezoning case out on Broadway. It is being brought forward by the applicant, Seth Mahaffey, whose company owns that property across the street from their office.
You have to turn it on, Lynn. It's off right now. You have to turn it on the side.
So the property is shown with the A on it, so it's zoned A for residential. It is proposed to be a commercial site that would be developed into a self-fueling area. As you can see on this overhead map, the blue star indicates the approximate location of the new facility. It was an old outdoor movie theater, and you may remember it. As such, the movie theater was on the south, I guess the southern corner, closer to the residence. It is near the I-20 interchange, as you can see, in 70. And so it's adjacent to other industrially zoned property. There are 2 residences close to the subject property, but not the site, so they're marked with red X's. And the property owners within 200 feet were notified as per state law and city ordinance. So this is a site, kind of a site photo. East Broadway is off to the left. The adjacent homes are in the distance. The new site has been cleared by Mr. Mahaffey's company, and the new development site area for the fueling station is indicated on the right. They have future plans to put an accessory building that would potentially have a machine shop somewhere, a small machine shop somewhere on the site after the initial use. Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval at its last meeting on 5/28. The adjacent property owners did come to the P&Z meeting, and they are here tonight, as well as Mr. Mahaffey, to speak with y'all. City staff is recommending that it be approved by City Council. And any questions? I'll yield the podium.
Okay. Do we have a motion to close public hearing?
Make a motion we close.
No, I'm sorry. First one.
Oh my goodness. I was the adjacent home in the picture. Let me get my paper here. I have lived in the area for over 30 years, and I decided to branch off from one of my parents' lots that is not pictured, and start my own family. And so it is a touchy subject for me to think that there's going to be something like that moved in. I do have 3 children that play in the backyard just right there by the zoning that's trying to be changed within the 200 feet. For my research, gas stations fumes can be really harmful for our lungs, and my husband that lives in the house that was shown does have a paralyzed diaphragm due to COVID in 2021. So we do have that issue, and he's fully disabled and he's still on oxygen today because of that. So that is a big concern for us, and I don't think any amount of concrete can keep us safe if something does go wrong with the gas station itself. But I hope y'all consider my family and my concerns over just what it's going to bring to the population, as well as any homeless issues or anything that it might bring as well. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
You need me to come forward?
Yeah, if you want to speak.
Good morning. So we acquired the property, I guess, 1st of April. Right now, we're just looking at putting in a fueling station. It will be open to the public, more so. We have 60 pieces of rolling equipment just between 3204 East Broadway and 3206 East Broadway. We also own M&B Oilfield. So this filling station is going to be a big, tremendous help for us, and it's going to be an investment back into our company. Future project down the road, we're going to look at putting in a machine shop closer to Airgas. The fueling station is going to be on the east end of the property. We're saving that. That's the best part of the property for the fueling station. We're also trying to acquire the 1.8 acres that is on the east side of the property as well. All that area is already industrial. We're just asking to be the same. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have a motion to close public hearing?
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We'll now move to item 6E, which is discuss, consider, and act upon a request to rezone TMP Block 21A 6.013 acre tract addressed as 3203 East Broadway Avenue, Sweetwater, Nolan County, Texas, from A dwelling district to K industrial district.
So moved.
Second.
Who seconded?
I did.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carried and approved. We now move to item 6F, which is to hear a presentation from Lynn Barrett, Director of Planning and Operations, regarding code enforcement updates.
We were busy again with both building inspections. A huge number, proportion of the inspections were for gas tests for all of the Atmos work that they have been replacing individual gas meters for commercial customers primarily. And so we anticipate that will continue since they're moving in phases through the various neighborhoods. We had one tear down of a dilapidated structure. P&Z did hear one plat in addition to the rezoning that you just acted on. We didn't have any variances in May, and we had 75 building permits. So we've been continuing to be quite busy, and of course trying to get mowing notices out has been with the rain, which is a blessing, but it also makes the grass grow. Any questions?
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, we'll now move to item 6G, which is discuss, consider, and act upon approving appointment of interim city attorney for the city of Sweetwater. And I make a motion to appoint Samantha Mara.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. City managers report.
Yes, sir. I have 2 items for y'all this morning. The Dog Days of Summer. Sweetwater Animal Control and Shelter hosted a successful adoption event during the Memorial Day weekend. The Dog Days of Summer adoption event was held at Newman Park. and 13 dogs found their forever homes. The Sweetwater Police Officers Association cooked hot dogs and gave out bottled water to the community. A huge thank you to everyone who worked and volunteered during the event. As a reminder, temperatures are on the rise, so please remember to make sure your animals have access to shade and fresh water. Sparks in the Park event, the Chamber will be having the fireworks display presented by Pirates Fireworks on Thursday, July 4th of this year at Newman Park at dark. They're in great need of sponsors. Once again this year, the Chamber would like to thank the many who have supported their efforts each year to bring this firework event to Newman Park and for all to enjoy. To be on the advertisements, donations must be received by Monday, June 24th. They accept cards, cash, checks, and an invoice can be sent to your business. For more information, call the Chamber or City Hall. Mr. Mayor, that's all I have.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move to the budget workshop. And Mr. Sage, you're first.
Good morning, everyone. For the record, my name is Sage Giller with EHT. Appreciate the opportunity to go through this presentation and talk about some of the projects that have been accomplished through the Water Utilities Department, the Wastewater Department, and also some of the budget items before you today. So here's kind of the agenda, and if you have any questions along the way, please let me know. We'll talk through those. Touch on a few of the water supply items, the current projects, planned projects, TCEQ compliance items that continually increase, and also operator retention and recruitment. We generally start off each presentation with this status of water supplies. Shows the amount of water in the lake, in the surface water lakes. Also, the rainfall that's been received. And as you can see, we've been trending in the wrong direction over the last several years. As everyone knows, the water level in the lakes is going down. Hopefully, this rain is starting to run a little bit of water. We've gotten rain, we just haven't been running water to recharge, to refill the lakes. But hopefully, we're going to get some soon. A few photos showing the difference between 2019 and 2024. Multiple years of not running water, not recharging the lakes, obviously leads to a decline, and it tends to go fairly quickly. This is a standard graph of Oak Creek Lake, showing the amount over a long period of time and how it cycles. And we go through up periods and down periods. And it's hard to tell exactly the number of years between refills, but somewhere I think it's around 7 to 10 years, something like that, is kind of the cycle. It varies, but you can see the marks that are over in red that are above that line. That's the flood pool. So those are the big events that we've had that refills the lake. This is since 2022. Kind of the decline in the surface water levels there at Oak Creek. Pictures out there at the intake structure. So that is the raw water intake at Oak Creek. That station there contains the pumps that pump it to the surface water, to the treatment plant, through Booster A and Booster B. Years ago, the city installed a floating pump station, as you can see right outside of the intake. That was back in a period when the lake level was getting lower and lower and lower. And one of the benefits is that it allows you to take water off of the surface, which is a better quality water. The lower water is not as high quality, so that helps with the treatment process, but it also allows you to reach out and grab a little bit more water whenever the lake gets lower. But you can see the difference in the levels there. So looking at your water supply, and Sweetwater is blessed. You have surface water and you have groundwater, and that is not common in every city. It's a good resource to have both resources. So one thing that the city wanted to look at over the last year was a conjunctive use study, which looked at the surface water and groundwater. How do you best balance those? Because you know, in the summertime, with all the evaporation, you're losing more surface water. It's losing fast. And so if you're not using it for municipal use, then it's evaporating and going away. And on the flip side, your groundwater, it's underground. It's not experiencing the evaporation. And so you want that to recharge and to save that for a rainy day. I don't know, rainy day is not the right word, but use it for when you may need it. And be sure that you're efficiently using your surface water. And so we partnered with a couple of other consultants, did some groundwater modeling and looking at the long-term viability of the groundwater sources that you have, and then also looked at the surface water usage. And some of the key findings that come out of that were a recommendation to utilize the surface water more. Let's take advantage of that, stock up that groundwater for during these drought cycles when we may need the groundwater. Let's utilize the surface water while we have it. What that does is it leads to longer run times at your water treatment plant. So a point there, conjunctive use study recommends options that result in increased use from Oak Creek Reservoir. City chose to target operating the surface water treatment plant to produce 1.7 MGD 5 days a week, which equates to about 13 hours of run time per day. Now, one thing that the staff did, along with their SCADA integrator and then one of our licensed operators, they all worked together. They did a really great job. Came up with some automation through the SCADA improvements to be able to automate portions of the plant so that you didn't have to have an operator there for the full 13 hours making sure everything was doing what it was supposed to be doing. Now, there are TCQ regulations where you have to have a period of time of on-site operation, which the staff does, but this was allowing us to generate the 1.7 MGD over a 5-day period. One thing that didn't resulted in a need to improve automation, which was a cost of about $33,000. But next slide, it was not done to eliminate any of the current operator positions, but it was necessary for the maintenance. And then overseeing it while folks are not there. So that was a really good, cost-effective way to utilize more surface water without having to add additional positions and not having to cut additional positions, but to improve the automation and the run times of the plant. This protection of the water supplies, static well levels, so the city constantly monitors the levels of the groundwater out at the well fields. There are well monitors that they can gauge what the levels do, and you look at what the static water level is, and then you look at, whenever you turn on your pumps, what that drawdown level is, and then you monitor, once you turn your pumps off, how fast does that water recharge back to static. All of that is data to kind of consistently gauge the health of your aquifer. If those wells, number one, have a lower static level, that means that obviously your aquifer levels have dropped over time. If your recharge rate, so once your pumping level goes down and then you turn it off, and if it takes longer to get back to static, that means that a lot of times your casing perforations, they become blinded over time, and so the aquifer is not recharging into the well bore as fast. So it may be time for a rehabilitation of that well. Kind of all goes into monitoring and deciding when well rehab projects are done, and the staff monitors that. So we talked about water supplies, and one thing that is very important with the staff and with predecessors is looking at the water loss, right? So we've got this amount of water out available to the city, raw water. You bring it to town, you treat it, you spend all that time, effort getting it out, getting it compliant with TCQ, out to distribution. You don't want it just flowing out into the ground. That's one reason the city constantly goes after Water Development Board money to replace water lines, because we don't want leaking water out into the ground. It's going to happen. You've got hundreds of miles of pipeline in the ground. It's going to happen, but we're trying to limit that. And so that first little point there, the crews fixed 67 leaks in 2023. But if you look at that trend, the graph, the trend of the water loss percentage is going down, and that's a good thing. It's a challenge, but the staff has been good at addressing that over time, and it's getting better.
Are most of our leaks old lines still? Is that the majority of it, or?
Justin, do you agree with that? Yes. Yeah. So there, just like a lot of cities throughout Texas, there's still a lot of cast iron in the ground, and those lines are well beyond their service life. When the ground dries, shrinks, moves, a lot of times those lines break, and then leaks occur. And so that's one continual goal is continually apply for funding to help replace those cast iron lines. So preventative maintenance costs money to maintain. Long-term savings, we take care of what we have. That has kind of been a mantra of the utilities department for a long time, is to be cognizant and really to look at maintenance. A lot of cities, that part of the whole game plan kind of gets disregarded. The city of Sweetwater has done a good job of putting maintenance time and effort and money into the water system. That includes pump and motor maintenance, well rehabs like we talked about, facilities maintenance, and then membrane replacement. We just went through the membrane replacement projects over the last few years at the water treatment plant. Looking to optimize the system, become as efficient as we possibly can on utilizing every drop of water that we can, not losing any of it. Now, go back to that water loss. I think it's around this year. It was what was the percentage?
10.8.
10.8. And for a city of this size, that's amazing. Like, you want 0, but that's just really not feasible in a pipe grid the size and the hundreds of miles of pipelines that y'all have. It's not possible to go to 0, but 10.8 is great. Oftentimes we'll see 20% plus, and I've dealt with clients that had 40% plus. That is not. It's not good from a finance standpoint or economics, but also just you want to be good stewards of the water that we have in West Texas, because it's becoming less and less available. So, doing a great job. The city's investing money in replacing those lines and becoming water efficient, and always looking at ways of being more efficient. So that's a good thing. Chemical use. Operating the surface water treatment plant more. So obviously the more we operate the plant, then we have some treatment costs that go up. That we'll get into some slides in a little bit later that will show that. Staff does jar testing to look at the coagulants needed for treatment, trying to balance that and being efficient, because there's costs associated with that as well. So a few of the recently completed projects, water production and distribution, the PLC replacement. So basically the PLC is a programmable logic controller. It's a computer, it's a high-powered computer at the water treatment plant. And that was roughly 20 years old, is that right? Roughly. And so we went through a PLC replacement and upgrade. And as you know, technology changes a lot faster than 20 years. So it was needed. And that was a good project that was accomplished with the SCADA integrator and funded through the Water Development Board. Emergency power generation. So back during the deep freeze in 2021, I believe, a lot of systems across Texas lost power. So then after that, there was a big rush to have backup power. So generators became the kind of the hot topic, and some of the projects that the city accomplished using a combination of ARPA money and I believe budget money. We installed a backup generator at the Highland pump station and at the well field. Go back real quick. One thing to note, and we'll get into this here in just a minute, but the bottom left photo there are the mobile generators that the city now has to send out to the well field if power goes out to the well field. So you send those mobile generators out there. Those wells will pump to the Highland pump station, and that middle picture in the bottom, that's the backup generator at the Highland pump station. So now you've got backup power there. So now you can send water to the water treatment plant. And in a few slides in a minute, we'll show you that the backup generator that's installed at the water treatment plant now. So now if the power goes out, you'll be able to get water from the well field to the Highland pump station to the water treatment plant, disinfect it, use your high service pumps to get it into the elevated tanks, and still maintain pressure in your distribution system. That is a job well done. That is a great backup resource that you have in case of times of emergency or power outages or whatever it may be. Picture here of the PLC that was replaced, and it's just an industrial grade digital computer, but it helps control and function a lot of the automated or a lot of the operations and treatment facilities there at the water treatment plant in the membrane treatment. Again, installed in the early 2000s, 20 years old. It was needed. And that cost us roughly $302,000. Senate Bill 3. So after the deep freeze, the Senate came out and said that every city and town would have every city in Texas was going to have to meet the requirements of Senate Bill 3, which maintained the 20 psi in the system during the power outage. Times of freeze or emergency or anything. So that was a big push to get emergency generators installed throughout the state of Texas, and Sweetwater's gotten that done. That bottom note there at the water treatment plant is the 900 kilowatt generator that has been installed at the surface water treatment plant. That cost us about $807,000. The 6 mobile generators stored out near the Highland pump station, those are ready to go. We've also installed the quick connects at the wells, 6 of the wells, so that you can take the mobile generator out there. You have a long cable that goes from the generator to the control panel, and you can start up the well. So current construction projects, council took action on a resolution to the Water Development Board earlier today to submit for funding to the Water Development Board for the lead service line replacement. That is another big mandate. There is an inventory of all the lead and galvanized lines in your system, the service lines. You have to have that inventory done and submitted to TCEQ by the middle of October this year. And staff is approximately what percent complete?
On the slideshow, I believe it says 73%, but the recent update is 75% complete with that.
And so doing a great job on that, and well ahead of a lot of the cities that we've dealt with. And so you've got to identify the lead and service lines, put that into a large spreadsheet, get that all submitted to TCEQ in time for that deadline. Now, the resolution you passed was funding through the Water Development Board to help pay for that process. And it also, the intention is to be able to help reimburse the city for the vacuum trailer that was recently purchased. Photo there on the bottom right of the vacuum trailer. And that is going to be a very useful tool, not only for this program, for a lot of other projects that the city has. One thing that we're finding more and more, that the right-of-ways available where your water lines are is becoming more and more crowded. There's gas lines, there's fiber optic lines, and all that has to be identified before you start putting the backhoe in the ground and possibly damage one of those lines. You call for locates, and locates are good, but they're not always 100% right. So if you have one of these hydrovac machines, it's basically a non-invasive excavation machine, so where you can use a wand, uses water to dig a hole, and you can look down there and see where those other buried utilities are without breaking through and damaging them. Very useful tool. I think the guys are happy with it.
Absolutely.
So the intent with the Water Development Board funding is that we procured on behalf of the city that vacuum trailer. You received bids, we advertised, you received bids, made a selection. So that is all in accordance with the Water Development Board process. As you go forward with the funding application with the Water Development Board, you would be eligible, once those funds are closed upon, the city will be eligible to reimburse yourself for the cost of that vacuum trailer, and also cost of staff time or consultant time or whatever it may be in developing that inventory of your lead service lines. So and that's on a 51% grant, 49% loan funding package. So it's a great funding terms. One reason we pursued it. There are a lot of hoops to jump through. We do it all the time. We try to help the city as best we can. It does take time and effort on staff, but it is a great funding option. Hydrovac, that cost was $68,250, and there again, it does qualify for reimbursement with the Water Development Board. Now, one thing I will mention, once this inventory is complete, you will now see on paper how many lead and service line lines are eligible or need to be replaced, and that will be a significant cost to go and replace them. Water Development Board is going to have money coming down through the EPA that you can apply for, and again, it should be approximately 50% grant, 50% 0% interest loan. All this stems back to the Flint, Michigan issues that were experienced years ago. So now the federal government is providing money for a lot of cities to be able to go out and replace those service lines. That will be a separate follow-up application to the Water Development Board, which we will assist the city with. But we couldn't submit the application for funding until we knew how many lines needed to be replaced. So there will be more to come on that. Step number one is to get the finance application approved by the Water Development Board and get the inventory completed and submitted to TCEQ. And we're ahead of the game on that. One of the other projects that was completed was the AMI water meters. This was a good project. City utilized ARPA money to help get that done. And what we feel is that it's also been a good contributor to reducing the water loss. Now, in terms of water loss, it's not true water loss. It's what they call apparent water loss, because if your water treatment plant produces 100 gallons of water and you send it out into the system, and then you sell that water through your meters, but you only show 90 gallons of water being consumed, those meters were inaccurate. They had lost their accuracy over time. That's why you went into this AMI meter replacement project, so that you could accurately meter and invoice or bill the water that you actually sold to customers and that they consumed through their meter. And so instead of losing that 10 gallons in that example, now the accuracy are like 99.8% accuracy on these meters. It's really, really good. There are cases where some of those have issues. City works through that. Staff has a process, addresses those, but they have really increased the accuracy of the water sold out in the system, whereas some of those older meters had lost their accuracy. So this has been a big improvement to the efficiency of the system. Back on the water loss, just want to show this one more time. Average through 2019-22 was 15.1%. That's down to 10.8. That's wonderful. It's really good. Oh, and AMI produces more cost-effective and efficient billing for water delivery. That's the key point. Not overbilling, not underbilling. We just want to meter it as accurately as we possibly can. More information there on the lead service line. I won't go through all of that portions of it, but that is just it's a fairly arduous task that the staff is going through to get all that done. But the bright side is there will be funding there to help with some of that replacement. It's just we've got to get the government funding coming down faster, ideally. Sometimes that's a little bit slow. This project, which is raw water delivery upgrades, these are improvements at the raw water pump station. So it would be at the Oak Creek Lake intake that we saw pictures of, Booster A and Booster B. Those get it all the way from Oak Creek to the water treatment plant. And there's some elevation gain that you've got to pump over and get to the plant. These pump stations are in need of repair. A lot of the electrical is out of date. We have a plan set, a project design for these improvements that's currently being reviewed by the Water Development Board right now. They're reviewing the plan design. We hope to get those approval in the next month or so, And then we'll be ready to advertise that project, and then council will select a bidder, contractor to do those improvements. Locations, the bottom portion of that photo is Oak Creek Lake, Oak Creek Reservoir, and then the Booster A, and then Booster B, and then on to the water treatment plant. Water line replacement. So there's a project, I believe it's C or D, project C, that is funded through the Water Development Board. So you already have funds committed, and this will be for about $750,000 in water line replacement. Our plan has been to bid out the pump station improvements, and then we know exactly how much of the Water Development Board money is left to do these water line replacements. We were going to have to, if bids came in higher than expected, we'd have to trim back on these water lines a little bit. Hopefully that won't be the case. It's approximately 6,000 linear feet of water lines that have been identified for replacement in this project. So future water projects, one thing to keep in mind is that Oak Creek line, that raw water line, is getting beyond probably its intended service life. Staff has experienced some leaks on that. That's a concrete cylinder pipe that is not really easy to fix in-house. A lot of times you have to hire some outside help to come in and fix that. It's just one thing we need to be looking at long term. That will be a sizable project, and you will need some funding source to help with that. But that is the only way for your raw water, your raw surface water, to get to town, is through that Oak Creek line. So it's a vital part of the system. There's one project right now that city staff is looking at. It's a leak under the railroad tracks. It's been identified with the railroad. We've talked with them on options. We were hoping to go and slip line a new line to the old line to help reduce some of the cost, and they wouldn't allow that. If the railroads, they control everything that happens inside of that right of way, and so they dictate to the city on how that's got to be done. So they want a new steel encased bore across there, and then a new water line slid through there. So that's one thing that's upcoming, and we're kind of working with the railroad right now on all those specifics. Additional water line replacement, and then concrete repairs at Lake Trammell. There's been some erosion and some issues with some of the concrete items there at the spillway, and that needs to be addressed at some point. There is some funding available. It's not always real easy to get, and it's usually a pretty high match portion, but that's something we need to look at, potentially getting some funding to help with some of those repairs, just to reduce extended or significantly more erosion and damage to that structure out there at the lake. There is a current wastewater treatment plant and collection system project that's being reviewed by TCEQ right now. I'm sorry, not TCEQ, Water Development Board. As soon as that is approved, we'll be able to go out or come to council and then advertise for that project as well. It includes collection system replacement of about $480,000. There's a creek crossing there in F and Lewis, and then also Crane from 12th to 5th. Some lines that have given trouble, had some leaks, and some of those old clay tile pipes start to cave in, brick manholes start to fail. We're trying our best to get those taken out of the system and replaced with PVC. In addition to that project, there are planned improvements at the wastewater treatment plant, between $1.5 and $2 million available for a lot of equipment replacement and upgrades, and also the SBR system, the PLC replacement, the UV system replacement. All of those items are in the plans to be replaced, funded through the Water Development Board. Back to regulatory compliance. Lead and copper is a big topic with TCEQ. Like I mentioned, there's been some nationwide, national news type cases that have led to a lot of this. More and more sampling out in the system is upcoming. So that first little point there, June 1st to September 30th, 2025, the city must begin collecting lead, copper, and water quality parameter samplings once every 6 months, which will at an increased number of sites out in the system. So that's going to mean more sampling cost and more testing cost in the budget. I know our operator, Dave Baker, has been working with Justin, been looking at this, what's coming down the road and what those costs are going to be, and I know Justin's been putting that information into his budget request. Right now you only have to sample once every 3 years, and you don't have to do the water quality sample. So again, this will be a significant cost in the sampling. We talked about the conjunctive water use. That cost to the city was around $100,000, but it helped to identify the life expectancy of the groundwater, and then how to balance that best with the surface water led to more surface water usage while we have that available resource. One thing, or a couple of things to keep in mind going forward, expansion of the well field. You know, that's been talked about for years and years, and if that opportunity ever comes to light, the city should really take a look at that. We have submitted an application to the Water Development Board to potentially fund some of that work, some of that expansion if it comes up. It's nothing that the city has to take action on or commit to right now, but it's just kind of it's an application that's out there that if need be, you would have that opportunity. Regional water plans that are provided by the Water Development Board look at water resources all over the state. So one option that has been identified in this area for the city of Sweetwater in past reports is a potential interconnect with the city of Abilene. If we need to keep looking at that, if that's something that the city really wants to consider, we need to work to make sure that stays in that regional water plan, and ultimately the city of Sweetwater would be the sponsor of that, and have to come up with some type of agreement or memo of understanding with the city of Abilene, something like that. As we all know, throughout Texas, a lot of cities are looking at their long-range water supplies and how to secure more and more water for the long term. None of those projects are cheap. None of those projects are quick. We just need to continually be looking at that, looking at potential ways of funding it and what best suits the city of Sweetwater. You do, like I said, have two great sources. You have a surface water source and a groundwater source. That's not common everywhere. And so how do we best utilize that? That was the intention of the conjunctive use water study. And then how do we look long-term down the road is kind of some of these ideas that we need to kind of keep on the forefront. The West Texas Partnership, I don't really have much to talk about there. That's been talked about. City of Abilene, Midland, San Angelo, those cities looking at different options long-term for the region. Hasn't been much talked about there in the papers or anything in the last few years. Rising costs and reduced availability. The cost of treatment, chemicals, and processes at the water treatment plant to provide regulatory required water to go out in distribution. These costs continue to go up, and a lot of that's after COVID. Costs went up, and just the quickness of the scheduled delivery has gotten longer on a lot of that. I would say some of that has gotten a little better on delivery times, but the cost has not come back down. Here's a few numbers to throw up on the slide here, talking about the cost experienced at the water treatment plant. And as you can see, it's a rising cost over the last few years. One thing that Justin has worked on, and his predecessor worked on, and then in conjunction with our licensed operator, Dave Baker, looking at what the true cost of water is for the city of Sweetwater. What does it cost to get it from the lake, get it from the well field, get it to the treatment plant, to treat it, make sure that it is compliant, meets all the regulatory requirements, and then pump it out into distribution. That's your true cost, including all the parts and pieces that go into that. And so they've spent a lot of time, and that's a very kind of difficult calculation to make, but they've gotten to where the variable production cost to treat and deliver potable water is $8 per 1,000 gallons. So that's a key item in that part of the overall budget. $8 to treat all that water, to get it out into the system. Retail water rate currently 8.89 per 1,000 gallons. So you got to look at the production cost, how they've increased over time, and that in blue there, it has increased from 6.92 per 1,000 in 2022 to $8 per 1,000 in 2023. So, everything, as we all know, we're experiencing, there's inflation costs in our everyday lives, but especially in construction and operation of a water system. Costs are just going up. Wastewater side is very much the same way. That treatment cost to collect and treat the wastewater is 6.60 per 1,000. Retail wastewater is 3.53 per 1,000. So as you see, that's a little bit lower than what the actual cost is. And so some of that difference is made up through your water side of it. There's a balance there, and I know the council looks at that every year. Just a quick note on Water Development Board funding. Cities is very, very involved with trying to find funding sources to help supplement local sources of funds, try to make the money go as far as possible. And Water Development Board is one of the best funding sources there is out there. And the problem is it is a little bit time consuming. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. We try to do our best to help with that, but it does take some time. With that timeline, that last little bullet point, we've talked about it, but the city went ahead and bought that hydrovac machine so that you could utilize it today with the intent of being reimbursed by the Water Development Board money. That's just kind of one of the strategies that we've helped with to try to offset that long lead time of getting the money distributed to the city by the Water Development Board. So water and wastewater operators, I will say that they're getting fewer and fewer of them out there that have appropriate licenses. City of Sweetwater is blessed to have the operators that you have. The city has invested in that training and that retention of those operators, which is a great thing, because there are a lot of cities out there that are continuing looking for operators and can't find them. And so being competitive with other cities and other industries, that's a good way to have keep your operators available and available to the city and on staff. Certification bonuses, merit raises, all that good stuff you guys look at and consider, but it is a key part of the puzzle, because without those licenses, without those operators with those licenses, then you're not being compliant with TCQ regulations. It's just something you've got to do. That's pretty much all I have right now. If there are any questions, I'd love to try to answer those. Or I do appreciate the opportunity to present this information to you. Any questions? No? All right. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
One thing that I would say, Justin, is do we have all those generators in the same location? I mean, wouldn't it be better if we had them in separate locations, to where if something did hit that location, that it wouldn't take out all our generators at one time?
Yes, so we currently do have them all at the same location, but one of the things that we've looked at in the future is building a separate storage building for those, so we can have those stations
Staged out to where that they're not in the same place? Appreciate it.
Well, I guess it's my turn at this point. Sage, I guess, just left, but he did a great job kind of explaining everything that goes into running a water, excuse me, a water and sewer program. It's very varied, and there's just a lot of components to it. I don't think when people at their homes or their businesses turn on their water faucets and the water comes out, that's kind of the extent of what they think about it. But our jobs is to kind of look at the background and make sure that that's running efficiently and smoothly. And I'd like to thank Sage and Justin and your crews at this time for making that happen. It's not an easy task, but you guys make it look easy. So thank you all very much. I'll get started with the budget workshop for fiscal year 2024 and 2025. This is my 8th year doing this presentation to the council and the staff and the community. We're all appreciative of everybody's efforts at getting us to this point. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Kirsta for her great work on putting together the budget presentation, and Lisa and the rest of the directors team who we sat down with and went over this with, just to make sure that we give you all the best, most accurate information that we can. I'd like to start off all presentations with kind of a review of our mission and value statement. It's very important. It's really the heart of what we do here at the City of Sweetwater organization. We lead with trust and respect to provide a vibrant, secure community for all. That's our mission. We try to live that out every day in everything that we do, including putting together this budget document. When we get to the point where we need to make decisions for about cuts to the budget, for example, we hearken back to the mission statement. Does this move our mission forward, or is it going to stagnate our mission? What we like to do is utilize the values of professionalism, integrity, continuous improvement, and teamwork to help fulfill our mission. There's lots of ways to accomplish goals, and the example that I use when I talk to groups and to the staff is, say your mission or your what you wanted to get done is to get a new job. But along the way, you fudged your resume and your references, and you lied about your education, but you get the job, so you accomplished your mission, right? But how did you do it? You lied, you cheated, you stole your way there, you took the job from somebody that was more qualified, and that's never a good thing. So you got the mission accomplished, but how did you do it? So we want to make sure that we utilize the values to accomplish our mission in a good, positive way. That's what the citizens and taxpayers of this community deserve, and that's what we do every day here at the city. What we'll talk about, we'll start off with all of the funds, kind of a 30,000-foot view of where we are when you consider all of the funds that we utilize here at the city. We'll hone in on the general fund and the water utilities fund, kind of the two bigger ones. Other items of interest, including EMS, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that. We'll review the budget calendar, where we are today, until what needs to happen until October 1st when fiscal year 25 budget goes into effect, and then we'll open the floor to any questions that anybody has. All right, we'll start off with fiscal year 24 revenues for all funds. This is everything. And these are budgeted amounts. We don't have actuals yet because, of course, we're still in fiscal year 2024. But a big portion of our revenues for all of our funds comes in the charges for services and taxes, particularly property and sales taxes, of course. And as you know, that goes into the general fund. Miscellaneous is right about $12 million for a total, you see there at the bottom, of about $41.1 million for all funds that we control. On the expense side for all funds, these are again budgeted amounts for fiscal 24. Personnel in just about any organization, every city for sure, are going to be your high dollar costs that are going out to pay for our human capital. We couldn't do what we do without our people, right? So that's where we put the majority of our resources. Contractual services, about 14.2. Capital outlay, which is very important to keep us moving forward as a city. SAES did a good job in kind of explaining a lot of the projects that we have on the water side that we're currently working on and that are upcoming. A lot of cities don't, and I'll get into this a little bit later in the presentation, but a lot of cities keep their water and sewer rates artificially low because they're not investing in upgrading their systems. And so that's something that Sweetwater does. So we've been very proactive about replacing water lines and pumps and everything that goes into maintaining a water and a sewer system. That's why our rates are a little higher to keep up with the cost of progress. A total on the fiscal year 24 expenditures that are budgeted are about $46.2 million. And here's an interesting graphic that we wanted to show you all. Our current property tax rate is about 50.7 cents per $100 of valuation. But this is what our taxpayers get for that. They get 24-hour police protection, access to municipal court, code enforcement activities, a 24-hour fire and EMS service, animal services, sidewalks, streets, a library, signs and signals on the streets, parks and recreation, a senior center, a pool, aquatics, a golf course, athletics. We just installed a pickleball court not too long ago, an airport, a health department, a municipal auditorium, and a museum here that we share costs with the county. So we really are a full-service city. I was studying this infographic, and thanks to Kirsten and Kathleen for putting it together, because I think it's a good addition to the presentation. But just kind of compared to Abilene, these are the things that Abilene offers. They've got more golf courses than we do, and they've got more parks, and they've got more senior centers, but nevertheless, we offer very, very similar services to Abilene, which is 10 times our size, 10 times our budget. And so I think it was important to kind of put this graphic up there to let everybody know that we are a full service city, and we're very proud of that. And the things that we do are very varied. We have staff on the payroll that has authority to use lethal force. Not every company in town can say that. We have staff that goes out and administers drugs and puts down animals and issues citations. I mean, what we do here at the city is very, very complex, and I think this infographic goes a long way to explaining that. Now, honing in on the general fund, on the revenue side for fiscal 24, again, these are budgeted amounts because we're still in fiscal year 24. Taxes are going to be the largest one at about $8.4 million, primarily property and sales taxes. You've got charges for services at about 2.2, miscellaneous at 3.6, for a total general fund revenue budgeted amounts for the current fiscal year of about $15.8 million. And here that's shown on a graphic here on a pie chart. You can see that the taxes make up about 53% of our general fund revenues. And as you go around the pie, miscellaneous is about 23%. Charges for services about 14%. Those are the three biggest ones. And then fines and forfeitures are much smaller amounts. On the sales tax revenue for fiscal years 2019 through the current fiscal year of 24, you can see that we've managed to grow the sales tax over that amount of time, which is a good thing for everybody. We're projecting in the last 4 months of this fiscal year, June, July, August, and September, about $1.2 million coming in. And this next slide shows that if we hit those estimates for June, July, August, and September, we'll be a little over $4 million in sales taxes for this fiscal year. I had Kirsta kind of research that number, and what she found was that would be the largest sales tax in a 12-month period in the city's history. So we hope that we can hit those numbers June through September. If not, we'll get very, very close to it, I'm sure, to get right around the $4.1 million number, which if those numbers hold, will be about a little less than $400,000 above our budgeted amount for 24 of $3.7 million. So we're in good shape with sales tax. People are shopping locally, they're making purchases locally, and that's always a good thing. Property tax rates, when compared to 16 peer cities that we chose based on their population and their budgets and the size of their workforce, those kinds of things. These are cities not necessarily in our region, but in a lot of ways have very similar characteristics to what Sweetwater has in those terms. If people on the street pull you aside and say our property taxes are high, you might want to show them this, because when compared to these other 16 peer cities, they're really not. The average rate for all 16 cities is about 64 cents per $100 of valuation. We're at about 51 cents. So we're well below that average, and the second lowest of the 16 peer cities that we compare ourselves with. On the appraisals, this is always an interesting slide. The total market value in tax year 2023 was about $806 million. That's the market value, not the appraised value. The appraised value, as you know, is always a little bit less than the market value. But for tax year 24, preliminarily what the appraisal district is telling us is that total market value is going to be about $903 million. Total appraised for 23 is about 630, like I mentioned. It's going to go up a bit, at least right now. We won't get certified values until July, and I'll get to that here in a little bit. But the preliminary values for tax year 24 are about $687 million, that total appraised. The exemptions have been pretty consistent over the last 2 years. We're looking at about $10.1 million in exemptions. So when you take the total appraised minus the exemptions, the net taxable value for tax year 23 was about $620 million, and it's looking to be about $677 million for tax year 24, which is a difference of about almost $60 million. Like I said, those numbers won't be set in stone until about 6 weeks from now, so we'll make sure to get those final numbers to you at that time. Assuming a tax rate that does not change and we stay at the 50.7 cents, our tax levy, and the tax levy is just the money that's realized by the city in terms of property taxes. For tax year 23, you had $3.1 million that we realized. If everything holds according to plan, and it won't, and if the tax rate stays the same, which we're really taking a close look at, is keeping that tax rate the same, you'd have a tax levy to the city of about $3.4 million, which would be an increase of nearly $300,000 coming in from tax year 23 to tax year 24. Like I mentioned, all those numbers are going to change. We won't know until July what they're actually going to be. But based on the information that we have now, that's what we're looking at. The preliminary no new tax rate, and that all that means is if you wanted to collect the $3.1 million that you collected in 23, if you wanted to collect that same amount in 24, that's what your tax rate would be. It would go down to 46.0 cents. The preliminary voter approval tax rate is 54.6, and all that means is that if the council decided to go to 55, that would go beyond that threshold, and the voters have the opportunity to vote on whether or not they wanted to see that 55 cents tax rate or something lower than that. So it would trigger an election if we went above the 54.6. That would not be my recommendation. We don't want to deal with that. So we want to keep it somewhere between the 46 and the 54. And like I said, we're looking very closely at keeping it at 50.7 cents, the current rate. And here's just a little infographic about how the property tax rates break down within the city limits of Sweetwater. The largest one, of course, like it is in any location, is Sweetwater ISD. They're at 97 cents. I don't believe that includes any debt that they've incurred as part of their successful bond project. Those numbers are going to be reflected, but not at this point. You see our current one at 50.7. Nolan County is at 46.5. The hospital district is at 39, and then we have about half a penny at the Granite Water Conservation District. So that's in totality, that's what homeowners and businesses pay collectively. If they own a home in Sweetwater, they pay those amounts to those various entities, and we make up, I guess, the second highest portion of that after Sweetwater ISD, which is very typical. Typically, the ISD is the highest, and then the city's the second highest. Just a quick summary on the revenue, beginning with sales taxes. The next sales tax allocation report is due to the city on June 14th, so in a couple of days. Staff will continue to monitor the impacts of sales tax revenue, and we want to get the message out to shop Sweetwater. Right, Karen? It's very, very important that we do that, and I think our folks in town have been listening based on the results that we've been getting on the sales tax side, those numbers. On the property tax, the certified tax roll is due to the entities in about 6 weeks on July 25th, and the effective and the rollback rates, those final rates, will be calculated on July 25th as well. Now on the expense side, staying with the general fund, these are fiscal year 24 budgeted numbers. Public safety in any municipality is going to be, the biggest one. Police and fire, they're very, very important. Both deal in life and death all the time. And so we allocate, a big portion of our expenses, the majority of our expenses in the general fund go to, as you know, police and fire. And then you see the others, public works about 1.4, culture and recreation about 1.1, for a total of approximately $15.6 million worth of expenses on the general fund side for the current fiscal year. These are, again, budgeted amounts. And here you see that in a pie graph. Public safety makes up about 64% of our general fund expenses, like I explained. That's typical in any municipality across probably the world. We're no different. General government makes up about 12%, and public works about 9%. This is a very important slide. Wanted to point that out. We did some research on debt in the general fund. And as far as we can tell, this is the first time in the city's history that we've had debt on the general fund side. On the water side we do, and I'll have a slide that explains that, which is good. I would like us at some point soon to start looking at water debt as a model for general fund debt. This is for the ladder truck, as it says up there. The date of issuance was October of 23, and it matures about 20 years later in 2035. The amount of the issuance was about $2.1 million for the truck, and the bond principal payable is about 1.9 at this point. So here's some ideas. Just wanted to throw it out there for everybody's consideration about how we can, because our sales tax is low. I think we've demonstrated that in the previous slides. We have capacity to incur debt on the general fund side without getting us into too much trouble. We'll approach that at the average of the other cities that I showed you before if we were to get into debt to the tune of $8 million for street improvements. And I'll go over this table in as much detail as I can. You see on the third column, the CO series 2023 is the ladder truck. And that'll mature, like I said earlier, in 2035. And those are the annual payments in that column that we're obligated to see that through. That middle column is $8 million worth of certificates of obligation. If we were to issue them this year, it would be a Series 2024. And you see the annual payments as they go down all the way down to 2044. So it's a long time that we would be in debt to pay off the $8 million for street obligations. But eventually that debt would retire. The total debt service is that second column to the right. Those are the annual payments, including a potential street project and the ladder truck that we've obligated ourselves to. The last column is the required interest and sinking rate, the property tax rate that would be required to pay off those two debts. So it peaks somewhere in about 2032 at about 9.5 cents, and then it continues to go down until that debt matures in 2044. That's an option that we have. You could also go back to the voters if you decided you wanted to do streets at a certain dollar amount. We had some bad experience with that in 2021 when the voters said, thanks but no thanks. If that happens again, we'd have to wait an additional 3 years before we could issue any kind of debt, whether it's certificates of obligation, which requires council approval, or general obligation bonds, which require voter approval. If the voters say no again, we'd have to wait an additional 3 years. That just makes us further and further behind on addressing the issues that we have with streets in our community. My recommendation is for the council to take a hard look on issuing certificates of obligation as a council, which don't require voter approval, and the main reason I think that is that streets are a need, it's not a want. If we were looking to spend $2-3 million on a new city hall, that's probably a different story. That would be more of a want than a need in many people's eyes, and I would agree with that. But streets are a need. There's a great need. We've never had a fully comprehensive street improvement program where we've poured millions and millions and millions of dollars at one time into it to improve the quality and drivability of our streets. We do the Seal Coat project, which is a couple $100,000 every year, which is good, but in my mind, it's a Band-Aid more than anything else. We need to tear out the current streets, get down to the base material, and rebuild them back up. That's what's going to be required, and that's what this project would address. So that's just a little snapshot of where we are in terms of possibilities as far as issuing debt at the council level would be my recommendation to get our streets repaired to the tune of about $8 million. If $8 million you feel is a little too high, we could go down to 6 or 5. If you feel 8 is too low, we could go up to 10 or 12. And we would adjust the required tax rate accordingly. It would either go up or down based on what you decide as far as that final number. Is it 6? Is it 8? Is it 10? But the further we delay it, and I think Sage did a good job on demonstrating how the price of materials go up, and it can go up in a very, very short amount of time. So a $6 million bond issuance that we were pursuing in 2021, that might cost 8, 9, or 10 in today's dollars. That's just the reality of the economy that we're living with and dealing with at this point. So I would throw that on the table for consideration as well. The longer we wait, 8's going to turn into 10, 10's going to turn into 12 in a pretty short amount of time too. So just food for thought. General fund expenditure summary. These are unanticipated expenses that we incurred during the fiscal year, just things that pop up that happened and we have little to no control over. Police equipment upgrades in the vehicles, we needed to get that done to the tune of $51,000. Training program in PD at 15, a police unit that was partially paid for by grant funding at $35,500. Playground fencing at Newman Park, I believe, $14,000. So for a total of all those projects, about $251,000. When you consider that we've got a $12-13 million general fund budget in total, $251,000 isn't a lot of money compared to what we have. We try to put these off to future years if we can, but oftentimes it's got to happen at the moment, and it's not something that we anticipated or that was in the budget for that year. And so our hands are kind of tied on some of these projects, and we've got to get them done very quickly. These are some of the citywide budget requests that we're seeing for fiscal year 25. We sat down with the staff a few weeks ago to kind of go over each and every project, ask questions about them, vet them. I just wanted to put that up on these slides just for your review of kind of what we're dealing with at the staff level. We'll make cuts to these. Some of these will go forward to the council in the proposed budget document when we hand that over to y'all. Some of them won't make it there because for whatever reason we found that we just can't afford them, or we can delay them a year or two, those kinds of things. So merit-based pay for all non-civil service employees, we're looking at a cost of living adjustment across the board for non-civil service of about 4.25%. It was a little higher last year. So that dollar amount for those employees, that group of employees, is about $414,000. And then you get into the requests: additional animal control officer, about $60,000. Increase the city's contribution to the firemen's retirement fund, about $60,000. On the EMS side, about half of that at $30,000. Seal coating for fiscal year 2025, $275,000. We've probably been averaging about $150,000 annually for that seal coat project. During the COVID years, when we experienced some financial difficulties and challenges, we did not do a seal coat project, I believe, for about 2 years. So we're ramping up, and those costs are going up. We think we can do a little more mileage with $275,000 than the typical $150,000 or so that we have been putting toward that project. So that's probably a project that makes it into the final budget for your review. I don't know if the amount will stay at $275,000, but it's going to be somewhere close to that. AC repairs in the police department. And we've had significant troubles there, Brian, over the years. It kind of started off that way and hasn't let up. We're looking at about $25,000 to get those repaired. Outdoor warning sirens at $20,000. A firefighter rescue device at $70,000. The big one that might jump out at you is a park pool maintenance project. It's an older, more mature swimming pool that we provide to the community. It's in need of a lot of repairs. We're looking at about $2 million for that amount for that project. AWAS replacement, it's an airport project, $150,000. And then you get into some of the rolling stock, the half-ton pickup, four-wheel drive extended cab at $35,000, 3 police patrol vehicles at $225,000, a plant truck at $50,000, another animal control 3/4 ton vehicle with an animal box at $80,000, meter reader truck at $50,000, pre-planning on another EMS ambulance. That's not the total amount, but that'll get us started at about $150,000. You see at the bottom there, Texas Water Development Board project for new water sources, about 4.2. We're looking at the Water Development Board to pick up, some of those costs for us, but we are at the point where we need to start looking at additional well fields or additional sources of water, so that in 10, 20, 30 years we're not in a bad position when it comes to water sources. We have all the water that we need to provide our citizens and our businesses. So that's a big dollar amount, but that's something we're looking at very closely right now. A lot of these are water, as you can see, $428 for a lead service identification. Sage talked a little bit about that. Another $2 million for wastewater plant upgrade and sewer line replacements. That's a big dollar amount, but if we don't do that, we don't have the rates set that can pay for that, we're just going to fall, like I said, with streets further and further behind. So, and that's kind of the theme with capital improvements. If you don't bite the bullet now and kick the can down the road, the costs go up and you still have a problem, but it's probably a problem that's worse off at that point than it would have been in the years previous. So the total estimated cost of all of our requests that we've been given for fiscal year 25 is about $15.5 million. So that'll come down considerably. We're in the process of talking to the directors and cutting those projects to where something that's probably a little more manageable, something that we can afford as an organization. I wish we could do all $15.5 million. I think all of us wish that, but that's just not the reality of the environment that we deal with. So moving on, the current fund balance in several of our funds. There's a lot of numbers on here. In the general fund, ending fund balance year to date is close to $7 million, which is pretty healthy. Toward the end of that row, you've got 25% of prior year expenses. That's a policy that's set where 25% of the prior year expenses have to be set aside in our fund balance. That number right now is about $3.2 million. The amount that we have above that is 3.7. So we've got, a little more than double what by policy we need to have. So that's a good problem to have. In the water and wastewater fund, we have unrestricted funds and savings of nearly $6 million. The water fund has always been pretty healthy since I've been here. On EMS, we've got some issues. Our ending fund balance year to date is negative about 3.6, and I'll get into more detail on EMS fund here in a little bit. And on the refuse side, we're doing okay. Our ending fund balance is a little over $314,000. We'd like that to be more healthy, and so we're strategizing at the staff level to try to figure out ways that we can increase that in refuse. As you know, we handed the vast majority of our operations over to a private contractor, Republic Services, several years ago, but we still do maintain staff in refuse to work on the landfill, to manage those operations. We still have, rolling stock trucks that we utilize on a daily basis, doing things here and there throughout the city. So we're not completely out of solid waste, but we're mostly out of solid waste. Some of the budget issues we identified in the general fund is the impact of sales tax. Like I said earlier, if the numbers hold true, we would see sales tax revenues in excess of $4 million for this current fiscal year, which is a good thing. Review the general fund balance and the property tax rate. We're looking, like I said earlier, to keep that the same going into 25. We always do every year an extensive review of all rates, fees, and fines, and we'll take that to y'all as part of the budget process. Any increases or decreases in any of the items in our budget ordinance would be taken to the council here in the next several months for final approval. Always continuing to look for efficiencies with limited impact on services, and I think that's key. We don't want people to pay any more than they really need to pay, but oftentimes if you go down on some of these rates that we oversee, that is going to have a negative impact on services. And that's true in municipalities and true in a lot of private businesses as well. Water sewer rate increase for bond projects, and we'll get into that in a little more detail once we get to the water fund numbers. And then funding solutions for future capital projects, especially streets. That's, as a staff, I can speak for them, that's our number one capital improvement item is maintenance and overall well-being of our street system here in town. Let's shift focus a little bit to the water utilities funds. Water and wastewater summary. These are budgeted amounts in the current fiscal year. Revenues of about $15 million, expenses of about 19.1. We've got 25.5 in unreserved and about 22.25 in reserve funds that are restricted. Water and wastewater fund revenues and other financing sources. The charges for services, what people pay, what we all pay on our water and sewer bills, is about a little less than $9 million. That miscellaneous number is also pretty high at about $5.5 million for a total of nearly $15 million. That's in the water and the wastewater fund revenues and other sources. Those are budgeted amounts for the current fiscal year. The top 10 water consumers for fiscal year end 23. The city of Bront uses about 110 million gallons of water in fiscal year end 23. You notice that amount billed is it's not in thousands. That's $5,524 for all that water. The reason being is that somebody in the way past, decades ago, thought it would be a good idea to sell the city of Bront water at about 5 cents per gallon. And we have a current contract with them for that is ongoing. And I'd like for the new interim city attorney to take a look at that contract to see if there's any way that we could amend it or get out of it, because they've got a heck of a deal and we don't. What that means is the citizens and businesses of Sweetwater are subsidizing the city of Bront in their water purchases. And I don't think that's fair, but like I said, decades ago, somebody thought that was a good idea. They signed a piece of paper, and that piece of paper is still in effect. And so we'll see what we need to do to maybe try to get out of that, or at least amend the dollar amount so that it's more fair and equitable. USG and Georgia Pacific, no surprise there. They're our second and third largest water customers. They pay a standard rate, so that's kind of what you're seeing. If Bront had a standard rate, it'd probably be closer to $1 million a year or so that they'd be paying. So that's a lot of money that the citizens of Sweetwater are subsidizing. City of Roby and Trent, they pay standard rates. Everybody else on this list does. Housing Authority, Sweetwater ISD. So those are our top 10 water consumers. I always marvel with the slide. It's pretty interesting to see how much water some of these entities use on a day-to-day basis, and that adds up over the course of a year, of course, and then the amounts that we bill them. But that Bront first row item really stands out. I know, right? Okay, water rates. These are based on a Texas Municipal League rate survey that was done this year. That N14 number means that there were 14 cities between 10,000 and 15,000 that answered the survey. And so that's how they're getting these averages. The averages for the 14 cities that were surveyed for 5,000 gallons of residential is $42.22. You'll see that Sweetwater in the middle there is our rate for that amount of usage is $47.26. So we're about 12% over the average rate of our peer cities within that population group. That 14 numbers of cities that were surveyed is not very high. You want at least 30 to get a little more accurate number as far as what the peer averages would be, but the 14 are the ones that answered, and so that's what we have to work with. On the commercial side for water, if you're a commercial business and you're using 50,000 gallons a month, the peer average for the 14 cities is $423. For Sweetwater, it's $445 just about. So we're about 5% over that peer average, which in my mind is not bad. On the wastewater side, same kind of thing, 5,000 gallon residential use, and 50,000 gallon commercial use. On the residential, the residences are paying $40.15 for the 5,000 gallons. Here in Sweetwater, residents are paying $47.26, and so we're 18% over that peer group. I'd like to point out, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of these cities, I would guess, I don't have hard data to support it, but I would guess their rates are lower because they're not investing in capital projects and they're letting the lines deteriorate over time, whereas we are very aggressive, as you saw from Sage's presentation, in getting the lines replaced and getting the equipment, updated and with the latest technologies and those kinds of things. Other cities may not be as aggressive as we are. That probably plays at least a little bit into why we're so far above the peer average. On the commercial side, for 50,000 gallons of wastewater use, the average is at $310.55. We're at $236.47. So in this case, we are 31%, nearly a third lower than our peers when it comes to commercial use of 50,000 gallons on the wastewater side. The expenditures, the budgeted expenditures for fiscal year 24 on the water and wastewater fund. The source of supply, we have to pay for the water in order to bring it into town and treat it. That's why that number is so large. We wouldn't be able, obviously, to operate our system if we didn't have any water to treat. So that's a good expense. It's high, but I think it's fair. Wastewater treatment at close to $2 million. Debt service and interest fees close to $2 million as well, for a total of water and wastewater fund expenditures that are budgeted for the current fiscal year of about $19.1 million. So it's a very expensive operation to operate. Most of our departments are in the general fund, and our general fund expenses and revenues are a lot lower than on the water fund. But there's good reason for that. It's a very complex, very multifaceted type of operation to operate and manage and oversee. So that number makes sense. Certificates of obligation that we've issued in the past, beginning in 2014 to just about current, for well field development, water distribution, water treatment, elevated storage tank and system improvements, water system improvements, and wastewater plant improvements. The amount of issues, when you total all that up, is about $20 million since 2014. You notice that second row from the top under maturity column, that debt matures in August of 25. So that debt will drop off, but we have so many projects in the pipe that what we'll probably recommend to council is, in lieu of that dropping off, we'll issue more debt for other important and needy projects. Like I said, the amount of issuances for all of the total wastewater projects, capital projects, is about $20 million, and the bond principal payable as of the end of this fiscal year will be 9.3. And so we're making headway, but we've still got a little ways to go. And I anticipate that as debt drops off, more debt will be added. So we're always in a framework where we're issuing debt as debt falls off. I'd like to see that happen in the general fund. I know at the very beginning it's difficult because everything hits all at one time, but as debt falls off in 20 years, you issue more and you issue more. And at a certain point, you're issuing, debt's falling off every year, and you're issuing new debt every year. That's the way that we did it in Abilene when I was there. 10.7 cents of the property tax rate was dedicated to debt service. And so as debt fell off in 1 year, the next year you issued more. And then the next 20-year issuance fell off, and you issue more for 20 years. And so once you get past the first 20-year cycle, you're on a yearly cycle of debt falling off and debt being issued. So I'd like us to get to that point. It's going to take a while. I don't know if any of us will be here in 20 years to see that through, but it's an idea. I think we should work towards that. We are doing that on the water side, as you can see, but we're not doing it on the general fund side. And there's plenty of general fund projects that require large dollar amounts in order to sustain, our capital. $8 million will take us a long way, but we probably have at this point maybe $25, $30, $35 million worth of streets that we need to do. So 8 would be a good start, but it wouldn't end there. It would have to continue over time. So other items of interest, this is my least favorite slide of the whole slide deck. A lot of red there, a little more than I'm comfortable with, but it is what it is. This is EMS comparison of audited figures for the fiscal year ending 19 through 23, and then our 24 budgeted amounts. Like I mentioned, you see a lot of red. We are woefully in the red on the fund balance of that very last row at the bottom. You see the city's transfers in, so we're transferring money into the EMS to try to make up some of that. I believe that money, Kirsta, comes from the general fund. And so the taxpayers are subsidizing, EMS operations the way that we're currently operating at this time. EMS doesn't need to be in the business, a city-run EMS anyway, doesn't need to be in the business of making large amounts of money every year. What I'd like to see is more of a break even. I think that would be okay, but we're not at that point right now with the way that we're currently set up. And a lot of that is, somebody calls 911 and they're having chest pain, and so we go to their house and we administer medication, or we transfer them to the hospital, or both, and then we send them a bill, and then that bill just doesn't get paid. And so a lot of that is on the patient side, where we're issuing the bill and it just finds its way to the trash can or something. If they paid their bills, we probably wouldn't be in this kind of a position. But we do have a segment of our population that honestly can't afford that type of medical care and to pay for those medical bills. And that's a reality with any EMS type of setup. We do work with a collection agency that picks up the phone, writes letters, calls these people and say, hey, you got a bill, I can work with you, let's see what we can come up with. That's been somewhat successful. We get some response from that, but not as much as we would like. It's not 100%, it's never going to be. But that's the big portion of the shortfall, is people getting their bills and they just can't afford to pay it, don't want to pay it, whatever the case may be. And so unless we have a big shift in that, and by hiring this company to come in and make the collection calls and follow-ups, I think that's proven somewhat successful. But like I said, you're not going to get 100% compliance with those patients. We wish we would, but we don't. And I know hospitals and other health service companies in the industry around the country have similar types of things. People just don't pay their health bills, for whatever reason. And so it's tough. It's been a very, very, very big challenge for us. But we're gonna continue to research the subject and make any kind of necessary changes that we think we need to make to try to optimize the program and to get that money flowing in. But that's the biggest portion of why the downfall. So the taxpayers, like I said, of Sweetwater are subsidizing a lot of the EMS operations at this time. And then the Employee Benefit Fund for the fiscal years ended 19 through 23 and then 24 budgeted. You look down at the fund balance, it was 77 in 19, it's at almost 370 is what we budgeted in '24. So we've had a steady increase in our fund balance in this fund, which is a good thing. Our net revenue for fiscal year for '24, the current fiscal year that's budgeted, is about $31,000. That's not a lot of money, but this isn't an enterprise operation where we're set on making millions and millions of dollars. We just, kind of more the break-even type of situation we're looking at. As long as our fund balances are healthy, I think we'll be okay in this fund. And as far as I can tell, we're in a good spot with our fund balance on the employee benefit fund. Hotel motel tax, the city does not get this money. It's other organizations within the community that do. But we want to help them, however we can to get heads in beds. As far as the hotel motel tax, in the COVID years, you can see on the bar graph, you had a decline in that, but then it popped up to over $700,000 after the COVID scare had kind of made its way into the past in fiscal year 22, close to 710. And then we're back down in fiscal year. These are actual numbers of about 685. So it's hovering around that 700. We hope it stays there. In fact, we hope it grows. And so we'll know more as the months progress and as those allocations start coming in and we reallocate to the chamber and the museum and the Coliseum and those places. Because like I mentioned before, the city does not receive any of these funds. It's for other organizations. And just to quickly review the budget calendar, here we are on June 11th. We're having the budget workshop currently on July 25th. Like I mentioned earlier, the chief appraiser certifies the tax rolls and calculates the effective and the rollback rates. On August 9th, we've got a notice of public hearing on the budget in the newspaper and a notice of property tax rates and dates of 2 public hearings that the council will have to oversee. August 13th is when we present the proposed budget to the council. So up until that date of August 13th, it's the city managers and the staff's budget. When we hand it over to y'all, it's the council's budget. Your charge at that point would be to review everything, and we bring back the document at a later date for final approval to go into effect October 1st. On September 10th, we've got public hearings and adopting the appropriations ordinance, the rate schedule, the budget ordinance, and the ordinance to amend the current fiscal year 24 budget, because one of the slides previously said, we had unbudgeted items that just came up we had to pay for. We have to put those in the amended budget for 24 and finalize that, and council would have to take action on that on September 10th. September 17th is a reading and adoption of the ordinance to setting and levying the tax rate. And then October 1st, our first day of fiscal year 2025. Can't believe we're there, almost. So just that infographic one more time, but now's the time for any questions that y'all may have. Myself or staff is available to try to figure things out for y'all. If you have any questions.
Looks good.
Okay, thank y'all.
Now we call for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Thought I heard a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Gotta go to work.
Yeah.